There's something about being home alone that makes small things feel bigger than they probably are. A knock at the door, a noise from another room, somebody calling your name when nobody else should be there. These are 3 stories from people who had nights they still haven't forgotten. I was in my kitchen one evening in early March, maybe around 7:20, when someone knocked on my front door and said police, welfare check. And the thing is, I hadn't called anyone, and nobody I knew had any reason to. So I just stood there for a second because it didn't make sense. Then I walked over and looked through the peephole and saw a uniform, dark blue badge. Everything looked normal at a glance. He knocked again, just like before, and said, "Ma'am, I just need to make sure you're okay." I asked who requested it, and he said it came through dispatch. And he just needed to step in for a minute. Something about that felt off, because he didn't give a name or anything specific. So I told him I was fine. He paused for a second, then said, "I still need to see you in person." My hand was near the lock, but I didn't turn it. I asked for a name or a case number. There was a short pause before he said, "You can check that after I come in." That's when I stepped back from the door instead of opening it, and right after I moved away, the knocking stopped completely. No footsteps, nothing. Just quiet on the other side. I stayed there, watching the door for a few seconds. Then I heard a faint shift right up against it, like he was standing closer now, not leaving, just right there. And then his voice came through again, lower this time, saying, "Just open it." I didn't answer, and I picked up my phone, and right then, the handle pushed down hard and snapped back up when it didn't open. And before I could move again, he hit the door with his shoulder, not full force, but enough to make the frame shake. I backed away fast and moved toward the kitchen while dialing the police, and I heard him hit the door again, harder this time. And then it stopped for a second, and I thought maybe he stepped away. And right as that thought hit me, he slammed into it again. And something near the top of the door made a sharp crack, like it almost gave. And I moved toward the back door, thinking I could get out. But I froze when I heard him step off the porch and go along the side fast. And a few seconds later, I heard something at the back, the handle jerking once, then again harder, and the frame rattled against the lock. And I could hear him right there on the other side, not saying anything now, just staying close to the door. And I didn't move. I just stood there holding my phone while the operator was talking. And then the handle stopped moving, and there was a second of silence before he hit that door too, hard enough that something in the frame popped, and I backed further down the hallway until I hit the wall, and I just stood there stuck. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. No footsteps, no voice, nothing, just quiet again. And a few seconds later, I heard a car door slam from the front and an engine start. And I stayed there until the police got there and came inside, and they checked both doors and said the front frame had split slightly near the lock, and the back door had a loose hinge from the impact. And they told me nobody had been sent out for a welfare check to my address. And the part I keep thinking about is how fast it turned, like he didn't stay there trying to talk once. I didn't open the door. He just went straight to trying to force his way in. And if that frame given even a little more on that second hit, I don't think I would have had time to react before he was already inside. This happened to me when I was 16, and I don't really talk about it because even now it sounds like I'm exaggerating parts of it. But I remember the exact night because my parents were out at my aunt's place for her birthday, and I stayed back since I had school the next day, and my younger brother had gone with them, so it was just me in the house. And I'd done this before, so it wasn't a big deal. I ordered food, locked the doors, and was just in my room watching stuff, and sometime around a little past midnight, I heard something from downstairs that sounded like one of the kitchen drawers closing. Not loud, just that soft wooden slide, and I remember I paused what I was watching and just listened for a bit because it didn't make sense, and I thought maybe I left something open or something inside moved on its own. So I got up and opened my bedroom door, and the hallway light was off like I'd left it. Nothing looked wrong, and I stood there for a few seconds just listening, and it was quiet again, so I went back in and shut the door, and maybe 5 minutes later I heard it again, but this time it wasn't a drawer. It sounded like something lightly hitting the counter, like plastic or something being set down. And that's when it started to feel off, because it wasn't a random noise anymore. It was two separate things. And I remember picking up my phone and just holding it without doing anything yet. And I opened my door again and stepped into the hallway. And I could see down the stairs into the living room area. And everything looked normal. No lights on, nothing moving. And I told myself I was overthinking it. So I walked back in and shut the door again. And right after the latch clicked, I heard a very light step on the stairs. Like a single step, not creaking, like someone stepping carefully. And I didn't move for a second because I knew what that sound was, like I didn't need to check again. And I slowly locked my door. Even though I'd never done that before, and I stood there trying to decide if I should call my dad or just call the police. And while I was thinking, I heard another step, a little higher this time. And then it stopped, and that pause didn't feel like hesitation. It felt like they knew I heard them and just waited. And I remember backing away from the door slowly and keeping my eyes on the handle. And I texted my dad first because I didn't want to overreact. Just something like, "Are you guys home?" And he didn't reply. And then I heard a soft push on the door. Not enough to open it, just enough that the handle moved slightly, like someone testing it. And I called the police right then, and I was trying to keep my voice low while telling them someone was inside. And while I was on the call, the handle went down slowly and stopped because of the lock, and then it went back up. And there was a pause, and then a knock. Not loud, just 2 taps. And it didn't sound like someone trying to get in. It sounded like they were checking if I was right there on the other side, and I didn't say anything. I just stayed on the call and backed further into the room, and after that, I heard a small shift right outside the door. Like they moved a little to the side, and then the floor creaked slightly off to the side. Like they stepped away from the door, but didn't go far, and I thought maybe they were going back down, and I remember the operator telling me to stay where I was, and I just stood there staring at the door. And maybe 20 seconds later, I heard something from downstairs again, like a cupboard closing. And then the back door opening. And I didn't move until the police actually got there and knocked. And even then, I checked through the window before unlocking anything, and they went through the house and told me someone had definitely been inside. The kitchen drawers were open and stuff had been moved around, but nothing was taken. And that part is what stayed with me, because it didn't feel like someone came in to steal anything. It felt like they were just moving through the house while I was in it. And the one thing I keep thinking about is that they stopped on the stairs and waited instead of leaving, like they wanted to know where I was before doing anything else. And I still lock my door at night now, even when I know no one else is in the house. I was in the shower one night around 9:30 when I heard someone call my name from inside the house. And the thing is, I knew I was home alone. And the voice sounded normal, like someone calling from the hallway. And I turned the water off right away and just stood there listening carefully. And this was around mid-April in the spring, and I was 14 at the time, and my parents had gone out for the evening to a friend's place, and my older brother Mason was supposed to be home, but he left earlier that night to meet his friends, so it was just me inside the house, and I had been home alone before, so it didn't feel unusual at first, and I was just taking a shower before going to bed. And I had music playing softly from my phone on the sink, and when I heard my name the first time, I thought it came from the song or maybe from outside, so I didn't react right away. And then it came again in the same tone from outside the bathroom. And that's when I reached over and turned the water off completely and just stood there, and I could hear the water dripping from the shower head and hitting the floor, which made everything else feel quieter. And I reached out and locked the bathroom door without opening it, and my hands were shaking a bit while I did that, and I grabbed my phone from the sink and checked the time quickly, and I remember seeing it was around 9:40 at night, and I thought maybe Mason came back and was messing with me. So I called him right then, and it rang a few times and went to voicemail, like he wasn't even near his phone. And right after that, I heard a step in the hallway outside, and it was just one step closer to the door, like someone had been standing there already. And I said, "Who is it?" through the door in a low voice, and there was no answer from outside. And then the handle moved down slowly and stopped because of the lock, and I could tell someone was right there on the other side of the door, because the handle didn't bounce back right away. It stayed there for a second, like they were holding it down, and I stayed where I was holding my phone tight. And I could feel water still running down my arms and onto the floor. And I called my mom and told her someone was in the house. And while I was talking to her, I heard 2 light taps on the door. Not loud, just soft. And then I heard the voice again say my name in the same tone, like nothing was wrong. And my mom heard it through the phone and told me to call the police right away. And I hung up and dialed 911 while standing there and trying not to make noise. And while I was on the call, I heard footsteps move away from the door and down the hallway, and I thought maybe they were leaving that area. And I remember I moved a little closer to the door and unlocked it just a little to see if he was still right there. And the second I did that, the handle pushed down hard from the other side, like they were already waiting there, and I slammed the lock back into place and stepped away fast. And the door hit the frame once, like someone pushed their weight into it, and I could hear a small sound from the bottom of the door, like pressure against it. And then it stopped again, and everything went quiet for a few seconds. And I stayed there holding my phone, just listening. And the operator kept asking if I was safe. And then I heard movement again. But this time, it wasn't at the door. It was inside my room, like something brushing against my desk or my chair. And I froze right there because I knew I had left my bedroom door open when I went into the bathroom. And I slowly turned my head toward the small gap under the bathroom door, and I could see a shadow shift across the light from my room. And that's when it hit me that whoever was there had gone around and was now inside my room instead of the hallway. And I backed away from the door and looked at the small window above the sink, thinking if I could get out that way. But it was too small and had that metal screen on the outside. And while I was still on the call, I heard something slide across my bedroom floor, like my chair being moved a little. And then I heard a step right outside the bathroom door again, and the handle moved slowly like before and stopped at the lock. And I didn't move at all and just stayed there listening. And then there was one hard hit on the door, not a knock, just a hit like someone tested it with force. And the door frame made a sound, and I stepped back without thinking, and I could feel the floor getting wet under my feet from the water still dripping off me. And then it went quiet again. No footsteps and no movement. And it stayed like that long enough that I thought maybe they left the room again. And then I heard something right outside the bathroom window, like a small scrape against the screen. And I turned and saw the screen bend in a little and go back, like someone pulled it and let go. And I didn't know which side to watch anymore, because they were moving between the door and the window without making much noise. And I just stood there holding my phone and waiting for the police to get there. And after what felt like a long time, I finally heard the front door open downstairs and voices calling out. And I didn't open the bathroom door until one of them came up and knocked and said police. And I waited there for a second, listening to more than one voice in the hallway and the sound of their radios before I unlocked it. And when they checked the house, they told me the back door was unlocked when they came in, and there were wet footprints mixed with mine in the hallway leading to my room and stopping right outside the bathroom. And they also said my bedroom window screen was bent from the outside and nothing was taken from the house and nothing else was moved much. And I still think about the part where the handle pushed down the second I unlocked it, because it means he didn't walk away. He stayed there the whole time, waiting for me to make a mistake.